What's happening? Benton here. Looking a little rough. Figured I would explain myself a little bit. Not that that's necessary or appropriate, but if anybody caught the prior stream this morning, we're gonna make some eggs here and talk about it. I don't know what the screen will show. Maybe I'll just point it at me. Yeah, how about that? So I think we're gonna have. I don't think we're gonna have to worry about the data plan so much. So far, I've been squeezing uh, daily live streams into, my normal allotment of data on my cell phone. And I think what's probably going to happen is I'm going to keep doing my discourses in the morning and just audio recording onto my phone. And then if I decide to publish it later, you know, uh, I'll wait and go to the library maybe and upload it on their bandwidth, right? So that'd be the end of the live stream part of it, which is fine. I mean, it kind of doesn't matter realistically. Some people enjoy the content live, and I think there's a lot of folks who I don't know if they're hate watching or uh, I don't really know what's going on with some of the viewership, and certainly, like I've said, there's been some new folks that somehow have wandered into the channel. And maybe the novelty of some of the spiritual discourse has caught their attention. And, some people, back to the idea of Howard Stern, and the people who don't like what he was saying, back in the 80s and the 90s, supposedly the stats, the research show that they actually listened longer than the fans, right? And at this point, I think it's more haters than fans. I think it's more people who are attracted to hearing ideas that run contrary to their own programming and belief systems. Although that's a hunch, hard to know for sure how that's going. Um, but what I realized is that this realm, and of course, the psyche and the psychology of the individuals here are operating with the psyche and the psychology of this place, right? So the belief systems and the indoctrination, there's simply no mechanism um, to value what's freely given. It can't be assigned a value because this realm doesn't understand um, such a concept. It's simply it's not able to understand that. And now some of this is my own um, reticence to fully accept that reality, or at least uh, a difficulty in divorcing oneself or myself from um, expecting or feeling entitled to a specific outcome based on the merit of the performance, right? And then, how much of the brainwashing of this realm is tied up in, America as meritocracy when it's never been that and it can't be that. And, to live in a vehicle is to lose everything multiple times a day. So there's another water bottle in here somewhere, but where could it be? No idea. I mean, it's here. And, we're in like 5 square feet or whatever. But oh, there it is. The Nalgene water bottle, measuring out the water uh, for the egg drink. Now, since we're extremely limited on resources, since this realm since this realm at a default level withholds resources, and to allow access to resources, is then some sort of reward for proper behavior, right? So, you know, if this realm was able to account for the value of something freely given, then there would be, probably equipment to where there would be bandwidth to do live streams. There would be, a larger space. There would be equipment, camera equipment, so that what's happening here, could be seen. There's a whole, we're beginning the eggs here, beginning the process of making the egg drink that's been spoken of many, many, many times, but never actually observed. And well, anyway, what I'll say to the chatters is it's not a threat, but there's the days of a live chat and perhaps live streams probably over with. And it's unfortunate, but it's probably necessary, right? And is it a full moon yet, or did I miss the full moon? Not exactly sure, but the human side, right, or the side that at least has been indoctrinated and came up through this realm, you know, uh, at a certain point realizes that I'm putting a lot of effort and energy into a thing that it's just simply not appreciated. And, does it need to be appreciated? Well, not necessarily, but then that's the freely giving side of things, is to give freely, but not in a way that's attached to, well, what might be received for my giving, right? And the realm, everything's set up here transactionally, right? And then also the extraction process of what is available to extract, right? What can the realm extract from Benton? So it's the interplay between, there is a benefit. It does help with an organization of thoughts, for me to speak out loud and deliver a performance. There is a benefit beyond what can just go on in my head, at the level of all of these spiritual concepts. But I think it's the problem that the royal we, is running into is tied up in, at what point is the continued disrespectful treatment, at a certain point, that's just simply untenable, and it just can't be tolerated. Meaning to continue to expose myself to such poor treatment, that also ends up symbolically treating blessing as if it were a curse, right? Because it's arguably way worse if I'm the one doing that, treating blessing as if it were a curse. But then to continue on in a way in which the people to which the content is freely given have proven that the majority of them are going to react to it in a specific way, right? Now, again, is it hate watching? Is it listening to the sound of my voice? What is it? I don't know, but it's to take and take and take, and then, not in a supportive way, and not in a, there's no encouragement. There's no, great stream, looking forward to the next one, right? There's just nothing except, again, am I a little crankier than normal with the lack of sleep from transitioning off of the cannabis? And yeah, I'm able to understand that I'm probably a little crankier and on edge more so than normal. But then that's probably a good thing to to recognize that, especially through all of these spiritual practices, it is possible to sort of train oneself um, to accept things that simply should not be accepted. And the reality is that what I am, within the context of this realm, there's a lot of things that get directed my way that just simply don't pertain to me. And, uh, you know, they do end up creating a struggle where there's already plenty of struggle, right? And, you know, the difficulties at the level of spiritual warfare it's already you know I don't need it in the context of getting my own mind right. It is meditative on some level, doing these streams in the morning, right? um I don't know what was last night. Rick's in the chat there. But the reality is, you know there's simply no benefit to me to doing the thing live. It doesn't. I'm fully capable, and I have no problem giving the exact same discourse, but with no live listeners, right? And the technology will allow me to just record the audio onto my phone without broadcasting it, meaning, there's realistically no reason to use my very limited resources. See, um, as far as within the context of this delusory realm, you know, this world of lack, right? That tells you how abundant it is. And I'm living in a car, um, doing a thing, giving freely, and into a realm that can't value something that's given freely, because this realm, again, knows nothing about love, doesn't know what love is, right? And doesn't want to be shown, certainly. And then, at a certain point, it runs afoul of my own, you know, traits around punishment and flagellation, right? Uh, the ability to rule myself with an iron fist and self-flagellate. Well, some of that does come to certain characteristics that are dictatorial and authoritarian, right? So, as much as I've been talking lately about Americans as authoritarians, well, now it's to see, certain behaviors and structures coming to bear or showing themselves around these actual live streams. And in fact, I would say it actually represents a spiritual attack against the live streams themselves, because with the number of views, which is not a lot, but with the number of views and the number of viewers and the number of people who continue to come back to my channel no matter what over time, I can take months off and have, and somehow there's always an audience. But then the people who probably look forward to it and value it, I think the problem ends up being the co-mingling with the ones who are merely playing along and seeking opportunities to undermine and seeking. What's up, Bad Barney? I failed to greet you earlier. My apologies. And seeking to, troll, which is fine. I understand the trolling elements because I've been on the internet. I've been here longer than anybody else, lest we forget. So I certainly understand that the trolling is pretty much built in um, to the whole thing. But to kind of folks that will play along and sort of just kind of bide their time and look for opportunities, such as, oh well, look, a new way to troll him because at a certain point he's been live for almost 2 hours and there's only 8 likes on the stream. And does it really matter? Well, yeah, it does matter, because to continue to freely give something that's simply not appreciated Well, that's called turning oneself into a sucker or a chump. But then, what are the options? You know, am I really going to have people email me so that I can, private the streams and then only allow the people who appreciate the streams to listen to the streams, but then the people who will play along and bide their time only to spiritually attack and undermine, like a slow boy whiteboard who will only subscribe to the channel, right? If I make it subscribers only chat, but then will then subscribe and unsubscribe, right? Or will only subscribe in order to make a comment or leave a comment, and then will unsubscribe, right? Um, and what does that say about the motivations of the person? And then what type of person is that? Well, it's somebody who's, most likely, whatever progress would need to be made spiritually for that person, in this life or this death, it's just a bridge too far. At a certain point, it's pearls before swine, right? That's what we're talking about. But it's, to get angry with the swine isn't going to do any good. You know, to herd the swine, what good is that going to do? Like to make demands of the swine, that's not going to help anything. And so that seems to be sort of the point of divergence here, seems to be tied up in all of that. And in my own internal states and energetic states, that the upheaval, within, in probably aligning with the moon cycles to some extent. Last time I saw the moon, it looks like it's about to be a full moon. I don't know. I guess I could Google it. But oh, you said it was last night. Rick said, okay, the full moon was last night. Okay, I didn't. Sometimes the problem is I say something, and with the delay, by the time somebody types a response, I don't know what they're responding to. And I do that also in live chats. I'm trying to discipline myself to be more specific, so that the live streamer understands. And I enjoy live streaming, and I would like to do it. I would like to do more reaction content, really, where I'm playing other people's streams or other YouTube videos and just riffing off the cuff. And see, that could be properly valued, because that could maybe be done under monetization, and maybe then get into like a membership thing. But then the amount of time involved in, again, turning something into a business, right? Not necessarily interested in turning something into a business either, right? If that makes sense. And y'all can't really see anything, so there's not much point in wasting the bandwidth of the video. And that's another thing, I am granted, right? Benton, not I am, but Benton existing within this realm that restricts. This is a realm of restriction. That's what it does by the default. It restricts, and then it sort of doles out, picks and chooses what to reward. But it's not a reward. It's the reward is to stop limiting what otherwise could be abundance. So again, it's an inversion. And people don't understand it, and they don't see it. Well, I do. Benton does see it for what it is. And so at a certain point, it's not possible to continue on behaving as if I was still ignorant to what I now have knowledge of, if that makes sense. And so that's probably what's been bothering me, is that Benton has been continuing on with activities, but based on the new knowledge of having a greater understanding of the nature of the thing itself. And then, perhaps more and more insight into just exactly who continues to come back here. And I would say, especially based on the small audience, a certain percentage of folks, whether they know it or not, are absolutely agents of the system. and not in a paranoid way or they're out to get me way, just in a certain folks do seem more or less obliged to watch and interact with this content. Um, and maybe it's not exactly that, but it's close enough, if you understand what I'm saying. And then, you know, with the proper identification concept, it's just not going to be appropriate. So when I was demanding in the past of donations and people responded to that negative feedback loop of me just getting angry and, famously demanding donations and then receiving several $100s, which that was kind of jarring. That was, years ago now. And then realizing even, sort of demanding that somebody click like on the stream. Well, that's not going to work. I mean, it will work, but it's not going to work based on the present understanding, right? But then, if I'm going to speak the thing with no live viewers, and then have less likes and views, then at a certain point, it's diminishing returns. So that why not just I can talk at my phone whether there's folks here or not, and I can talk at my phone whether it's uploaded or not, and it's the same effect on my end. And now what I am, and within my own energy sphere, I'm able, Benton is able to properly value these things, right? It's more actually kind of to freely give to myself for my own purposes, because again, I've recognized and acknowledged that it is helpful. These streams have been helpful for me to sort of focus and be centered for the day, if that makes sense. Um, However, there's no audience requirement. Whether somebody listens or not. Realistically, it's just my own version to kind of honor the honor system of, am I able to deliver the performance, knowing that, well, maybe somebody's going to hear this later, maybe they're not, right? And then if I have enough data, I can still do the streams unlisted, and I can still, after the stream's over, I can make it public. And then if folks want to watch it, that's fine. If not, that's fine. With less interaction, with less, you know, um, paying attention to how many views, paying attention to how many likes, and because it ultimately doesn't matter. But again, that negative feedback loop of, almost feeling like people are intentionally punishing just to see, how will Benton react to this? Like, will he get agitated? Will he sort of become demanding and assert, that he's entitled to clicks and somebody to click a like button? And then it's, how silly is that as a grown person, supposedly, to, demand that somebody click a like button or subscribe to a channel. And then who's even listening to this, right? And why? Because the chances of anybody, of any single one of the listeners actually putting in a good faith effort towards any sort of accessing of transformative spiritual experience, it's basically zero. I mean, let's just call it what it is. It's, you have one person, that's me, and I know it's going to sound like I'm martyring myself, but that's simply not the case. You got one person who's actually doing the thing that's required to continue to evolve the concepts and the thinking and to keep the progression going. But I'm going to do that anyway. And in fact, I am the progression. It's never, it's going to be a thing either way. Now, is it a tool in the mornings? But yeah, it is. However, it doesn't have to be done in this form. But then also, when properly identified, I'm not able to punish the audience because that's not appropriate. And, once the whatever the emotions are subside, I wouldn't want to punish people in that way. Anyways, like I wouldn't want to punish folks that way. Um, and it actually, undermines what I am. Like I'm lesser of what I otherwise would be by even behaving that way, if that makes sense. Um, and I understand this has been a lot of me, but again, it's been too much free giving, right? And then it's also, when I say to freely give, well, now it's like, okay, but does that mean that he's willing to give under certain circumstances tied to, money or resource allocation? And the answer to that is no, actually, because I'm going to do all of this anyway, um, whether it's in this form or is it's me, with a flashlight in my mouth and you know notebooks and a combination of talking to myself while making notes and then listening to content, um, and then some version of an inspiration and note taking. So one thing that's happened that has been detrimental, arguably, is that as some of this, the recent revelations have slowed down on the heels of unlocking the achievement of a true knowledge of self. I looking back on it, uh, Benton did not do nearly as good of a thorough job of writing down the revelations, but not to then create a religion or a system to give to other people. I mean, so that I can go back and review it. So that was some thoughts I was having before the stream started. I realized, well, I really didn't make proper notes for myself. So I'm actually putting the needs of the audience, or I have put the needs of the audience and the content itself ahead of my own needs. And that's simply not appropriate. Um, and that's not going to continue. Now, if I just really have it on my mind and want to talk for 2 hours, well, I'm free to do that without involving other folks. See, there doesn't have to be other folks involved. And is this some version of, you know, my own spirit is finally getting through to me that, hey, man, the time for this activity has passed, right? You've done it and you got what, you learned from it, what was possible to learn, and it's time to move on to the next thing, right? Um, and then it's certainly possible to remain obstinate and, uh, it's certainly possible to just continue on and remain obstinate and just keep doing a thing. But that doesn't mean it's appropriate, you know. And then, of course, Americans would be like, well, don't give up, never surrender, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, that's bullshit, you know. That's absolute bullshit. Know when to hold them, know when to fold them in my world. And it's time to fold them. And the reality is, nobody cares, nor should they, right? And uh, that's just simply what it is, and that's absolutely okay and really expected, honestly. And whatever growth and progression is going to happen in the near future, why would it be tied to this form? Realistically, it kind of doesn't make sense, in a way. And just because, and I myself have said, just because I'm able to do a thing and may have a particular talent for it, well, that doesn't mean that that's what I'm supposed to be doing. And certainly not in the context of, like last year, sleeping in my car in LA, did receive, pretty good amount of generous donations, especially around the holidays. Far more, in fact, around the holidays last year, it was way more than I ever would have even dreamed. And we're not talking about crazy amounts of money. In total, maybe $500. I mean, because there was one $250 donation. But then, especially with what folks are going through in their own lives, I don't even want to ask for anything, honestly. But again, at a certain point, this is a form, this world is structured in a way that if I don't demand, um, if I don't demand some sort of tit for tat, quid pro quo, this is America, everything's a business, and we only measure in money. Well, at a certain point, I'm freely giving something that has no value based on this world and how things are valued and the transactional nature, if that makes sense. And so it's at a certain point, I'm simply not going to be able to continue to participate in such a loop, if that makes sense. And I think I've probably known this for a little while recently, and I don't think it's a coincidence that within a few days of getting off the cannabis, that this has all come to loggerheads, as some might say. Um, which is fine. Uh, and I haven't been in a position to walk around picking up cans and bottles this time around. Although I will say this, I enjoy it, and probably the main reason I haven't gone back to it is, there is a health factor around, you know, uh, being exposed to certain germs, and there is an effect where a person does strengthen their immune system. That which does not kill me makes me stronger. That's true to a point, but you know, eventually it turns into, um, it becomes crosses over and becomes detrimental to be exposing oneself to such poisons and toxins in the environment, right? And I think that's where I'm at on the recycling. Um, and then certainly not interested in necessarily in, scrub a dub dubbing myself every single time I go out and try to pick up cans and bottles, right? Sometimes I forget to wash my hands properly, and it's like, fuck, am I really going to drop everything and seek out a fucking sink? Becomes a bit of a hassle, too much of a hassle at a certain point. And then that's where the health starts to be affected. So I don't know. If y'all have any thoughts, feel free to type them. If not, again, I'll just assume it's mostly people listening to the sound of my voice, because it shows you, where humanity is at, that, the primary attraction to the content is how my voice sounds, not what I'm saying, not what, what unique and novel insights and creatively, what can creatively be generated. That's really neither here nor there. It's just, he has a particular rhythm and manner of speaking, and certain folks like that. Well, that's not enough for me. That might be enough for some of y'all. And this is not by way of critique or criticism. And it's not a challenge, right? And certainly old Benton here is very manipulative, just comes naturally. So certainly not my intent to manipulate, but there's always a possibility there for manipulation, certainly. And then, health factors in around, recognizing as my body continues to heal. We seem to be dealing with some large intestine issues, but nothing serious. But again, the healing, the symptoms in certain, whether it's what the bowels are doing, or certain, maybe as the thing heals, there's certain emotions that go along with that. In Chinese medicine, which I found a lot of wisdom in Chinese medicine, apparently, which it makes sense. I mean, it's fairly obvious, but the emotions tied to the colon or the large intestine is what do they say? Grief and like letting go, right? So in some ways, it's probably a grieving process around, having spent so much time and effort and energy in this place. But from the context of the Fight Club concept of to let that which does not matter truly slide, it's like, the grief around being so strongly connected and identified with a bunch of bullshit like politics. And it's some of the stuff I talk about on these streams. So the letting go and the releasing, it's a refusal. In some ways, it's a hanging on to um, these ideas of what the government's doing, and certain people are trying to uphold Trump and blame Democrats, and Benton's very logical mind sees the folly in that, and at least wants to speak on it, whereas in order to fully heal the fucking large intestine, is probably going to have to just go ahead and progress and adapt and overcome, and just fully fucking grieve and make peace with the reality of how this ridiculous world manifests itself, right? And to do that selfishly for my own purposes in the context of the performance, out of necessity, in order to, again, heal the body. And let's not forget that old Benton continues to eat food every day when, talking about Jesus and all of these concepts, but hasn't done much fasting, right? What's up, Jen? Good to see you. And if everybody was like Jen, probably the streams would not, be taking, we probably wouldn't even be given this discourse, because if people were more like certain, and I don't want to call her out on this, even in a good way, but so let's try to not apply it to Jen, but if there were more folks who were more encouraging, right, who were more supportive, and do people even know how to be encouraging and supportive? Well, some do. Some people are supportive and encouraging, and understand that, that if they freely give, even something that seemingly might not be such a great thing to give overall, right, that it still has a meaning, and it's still important, right? So, if you have a broadcaster freely giving content, and freely giving of their own, essence, and doing that to the best of their ability on a consistent basis, that, it's like I've told my parents at a certain point, or my mom, it's like, look, if you'll come 5% of the way, I'll do the other 95%, but I can't, I don't even necessarily need to be met in the middle. It's just like, I can't do it all, and at a certain point, to continue on without encouragement, it's just simply not, I'm doing myself a disservice, right? But then, the personality that I apply to myself, inside of myself, tends to be more of a, oh, I can motivate myself, I can rule myself with an iron fist. So then what we see is, when my needs aren't being met, then my own authoritarian and dictatorial, and demanding, and again, assertion, aggression, dominance, man will dominate man into his own injury. So it can't ever be appropriate for me to demand things that the withholders will give, but only if they're forced to give, which is, again, that's, if it's not given freely in an inverted world, well, based on what Benton understands spiritually, if it's not freely given, then it has a value that falls so far below the value that's represented by what I am, that it's just not appropriate, even though those mechanisms whereby Benton has, ruled himself with an iron fist, it's just simply not appropriate to apply that to other individuals. So what is Benton doing? And this is the part that's going to sound manipulative, but it's really not the case, because, at this point, if individuals start to give, they're not freely giving, because they've had the opportunity to freely give all along. And the fact is, almost everyone has chosen not to freely give. And it doesn't have to be money. So that's, and that's where I've gotten to with the likes, is at a certain point, it's the recognition of, they won't even freely give something that doesn't cost them anything. There's no cost to a person who's listening to my live stream on YouTube. It doesn't cost them anything to click a like button or to subscribe to the channel. But because they are so strongly identified with this world of lack that withholds, so that the not withholding then seems like a reward. And that's a sickness. And it's not people's fault. It's not their fault that they suffer from this. It's that if this wasn't a world of death and a game of lies, I could help them overcome it. But I can't help them overcome it. So this is what I mean about, again, the idea of Chinese medicine in the colon. In order for my fucking whatever's going on in my colon to heal, right, then it's going to require the mastery of this area for me. It's to just completely understand, but without repressing, and to understand that to come on to live stream and to preach about no external power and no external meaning, but then to simultaneously demand that external phenomena, meaning the individuals that comprise the audience, that they behave in specific ways, that I'm actually, again, I'm treating, that would be to treat blessing as if it were curse, because I'm in fact demanding and in some ways connecting to a specific outcome of, in order to receive something that people are not going to freely give me. And I can't change the world of death and the game of lies to freely give. That's what I mean by no external power. I don't have the power to do anything whatsoever about the reality that individuals have come up through a system that has taught them to withhold their own gifts, right? And to continue to freely give my gifts to, it's pearls before swine. I mean, it really is. So energetically and universally, that sends a very strong symbolic message. As if this bozo will just continue to give, but he's giving to people who are unable to properly value the gift, right? Which is pearls before swine. The audience lacks the ability to understand the value of what's being given. And I can tell them till I'm blue in the face, and there's simply no effect. And that's the part that Benton is having trouble releasing and divorcing himself from, is the part where I can't do anything about any of that. Jen says she's driving around to look for bittersweet vine to sell to wealthy folks, wealthy white folks. Good for you. That's awesome. And what I will say, and I know Jen's not implying this because I think Jen knows me quite well. This is just my opinion. Or she doesn't know me well, but I think again, it's possible that she intuits certain things about me. Because I've been told by people in the past, and Jen's not doing this, but I've had people tell me, word of mouth, oh, well, there's ways to go get resources and do this and do that. That's not my path. That's not, Benton is not out here, devising and scheming ways to sort of game. And it's not wrong to game the system, but, my version of gaming the system is, as many times as they will let me, I'll go back and drive a truck for a couple of months. And then if they figure out how to keep me, I'll let them keep me, right? Because I know the value of what I'm doing. I know the value of what I'm doing. And so it's my job to make sure that this place doesn't take advantage of my own output energetically, and doesn't, and that I don't allow this place to prevent me from experiencing or from expressing, there's the term, from a full expression of what I am. And that is my job here. That's and I take it very seriously. And so that's what all of the years of hard work and persistence, spiritually unlocking a lot of these abilities, that's the entire purpose, is to, you know, be in position to manifest these things and to bring forth expressions of what I am into a realm that doesn't want expressions of what I am, that uh, makes an enemy of expressions of what I am. And that is the Christ story in a way, right? The man showed up, and the story says that the people loved him and accepted him and all of this, but then the people tolerated and supported and accepted the very government that made an enemy of what Christ was. See, it's the same for me. So even if Benton went out in the streets and was seen as some version of Christ, which is not a fantasy and not an expectation, but even then, the individuals, just like in the Bible, who were supporters and were taking, by the way, extracting from Christ. What were people extracting from Christ? Well, the healing. See, and I don't know exactly what people get out of listening to this, but something is being extracted. So there's talk of Christ would be traveling around in the Bible, and somebody would kind of sneak up behind and touch his garment or whatever in order to potentially receive some healing, if that makes sense. And then I doubt this happened, but again, it within the context of delusion, it didn't happen in the first place. But you have to where Christ needed a minute to himself, so he went into a house, to have a meeting or whatever with his disciples, and to get away from the crowds of people that were following him around everywhere. And supposedly they took the roof off of the house, the crowd did, and they lowered down a person to be healed. Right. And I understand back in the day without proper medical treatment and all of this, and so many people, with conditions. And then my own complaints this morning about the lack of consideration that is shown from the general public, and it's the same thing. Is it any accident that yesterday I ran into a situation on the sidewalk that I described in the previous stream this morning, and I identified the lack of consideration on the part of the lady I encountered, and for some reason I'm better equipped to deal with that than the reality that the folks who listen to this channel are a version of that same thing. Yes, some will donate and some will contribute and be encouraging, right? But that's more of an anomaly. That's more of a exception that proves the rule. The reality is the bulk of the people who listen to this are doing a version of behavior that's akin to the inconsiderate lady on the sidewalk, right? While simultaneously seeking to extract anything from, energetically from me in a vampiric fashion that's available, right? And it is my job to not allow that to happen. And I've been actually perpetuating it myself lately, because when I was ignorant of all of this, well, it's neither here nor there because I didn't know, right? But so now that I know, I have no choice. I must do better based on what? My own code. I have to do better, and I will do better, and I already am doing better. And that's the mission, to do better individually within myself for my own purposes, right? And the spiritual attacks and the cranky old man and the feeling some type of way, that's a part of the process. These are actually, with my own very sensitive internal spaces and energy sphere, it's actually it's very accurate feedback. I'm not supposed to feel good all the time, unless everything is aligned properly. So especially in the mornings, that's large intestine time, so I'm actually preventing my own healing while asking for Christ to heal me. Well, how's that ever going to work out? It can't work out, you know. So in the short term, a more peaceful, uh, more thoughtful, peaceful, maybe note taking and listening to myself, right? And listening to my own brain versus telling y'all all about it when it ain't going to amount to a hill of beans. And I've known that the whole time. The fact is, nobody is going to listen to any of this and be inspired to change themselves for the better inside of themselves. That's at 0%, and that's never going to change. So, part of the energy around clicking the like button is it's my own inability or refusal to properly grieve the reality that Benton is here doing a thing, and effectively he's the only one doing it. Now, are there other humans? If there's actually 8 billion or 7 billion humans, yeah, there's got to be somebody else doing it. But within this so-called truth community, and the irony, it's not even irony, but the idea that it's even referred to as a truth community, excuse me, that's not lost on me. That's quite the opposite. It's that you can't handle the truth community. Hmm. And in some ways, it's the inability to even properly grieve the fact that I have never, within delusion, see, and only in the context of this delusion, I've never lived in a proper society, and every single day I wake up here, I will never, in this so-called earthly life, which is a death, and this is some version of an underworld, I simply will never for one moment experience proper society. And in fact, only within myself, when aligned mind, body, and spirit, when filled with the Holy Ghost, when emptied of wickedness, when emptied of identification with this world, right? Um, that's the only way that's accessible. That's the only accessible form of proper society. And I feel bad about it. I feel rotten about that. Like it's a shitty bang bang thing, right? It's a shitty thing to just know and accept that at the age of 50, um, having cured and healed my own body and received healing, right? To put myself in a position to receive the available healing, you know, um, that's actually perhaps lengthened again within the illusion of time and space and location place. I've actually extended my own stay here for whatever reason. Hmm. And then, the grieving process around, yeah, I can be used as a preacher and a vessel to deliver a greater message, you know, arguably. But this is a time, the timeline dictates that there's no receptive audience. So, like from a parable of the sower from the Bible, some of the seed ends up, scattered on the rocky ground, and some of it is in the more medium ground where some of it's going to grow. Some of the seeds will sprout and some won't, and then there's the fertile soil. Well, what does the reality is? The only fertile soil is within me if I till the soil. Mm. And continue to till the soil, and that the fruit that grows out of that, it's proper fruit, but nobody wants it. Right. And now we get into the biblical concepts of an offering or a sacrifice, and then, back to the Old Testament, and, an offering being either rewarded and praised or rejected. And so part of the letting go and the acceptance and the grieving is to realize that at this point in the illusory timeline, it's simply not possible for the fruit that Benton is able to bring forth. It can't be valued because of it simply can't be assigned a proper value. Except within myself. Because what I am is not capable of improperly valuing the fruit. See, it only properly judges the fruit. And now I feel activation in the large intestine as I say all of this. Isn't that interesting? Again, I don't know that folks actually take me at my word with the just off the charts levels of active healing that have happened and continue to happen. But if you think of your colon, it ain't your rectum. Damn near killed them. In fact, your lower abdomen on the left side is like, that's where it starts. And I'm feeling activation in that area right now. And again, some might interpret that as, well, he's having pain there. But yeah, the pain is the healing, right? In inverted world, the pain is the healing. See? And then what does modern medicine do? Modern medicine trains everybody that as soon as they start to feel that little bit of pain and discomfort in their lower abdomen, will get off to go right to the doctor, get diagnosed, subject oneself to medical coding and billing. Well, I know the folly in that. And then explaining it to you folks doesn't change anything. And it's a further opportunity to extract from Benton by listening to his voice, the sound of his voice. Right. While taking no effort whatsoever to be encouraging or supportive. And then, what type of crazy person, right? What type of crazy person will continue to freely give? Now, meanwhile, again, what I am, it only knows how to freely give. But then within the context of delusion, well, where is the giving aimed at? And where is it directed towards? Well, the reality is, if it's not directed inwardly, it's a mistake. Y'all got to see this. This is what I mean. This shit happens to me all the time. I'm going to show y'all this. It's probably going to stop, though, as soon as I point the camera at him. Shit. Settings. You're going to love this if I can get the camera on it. Damn it. It's going to be done by the time I get the camera on it. Yep. Nope. Can y'all see that out the window? Yeah, there we go. See that over there? Do you see what's happening here? Again, it's the realm attempting to vampirically extract from me, what I might be foolish enough to give, right? It's a lady just happened to appear right in front of me and starts doing bizarre calisthenics, right? After hearing my voice and whatever I'm on about here, just presented herself. Happens all the fucking time, right? And of course, as soon as I acknowledge it and begin to observe it and point my camera at it, it stops, as I knew it was. I'm surprised it didn't stop before I could get the the fucking camera switched over. And people will try to make excuses and say, "Oh, well, that you're crazy. No, it's not. It's not a coincidence, folks." And meanwhile, that don't happen to creepy people. If a guy is creepy, you know, a lady might wander up to a tree and want to stretch out on a tree, and then realize, oh, there's a creepy homeless guy in that car, so let me go find some other. No, they intentionally. So I was sitting here trying to talk to y'all, and all I can see is this woman who's bending over and showing me her crotch. Right. I've had multiple 70-year-old women, because remember, it's Southern California, and I'm not attracted to 70-year-old women, but a 70-year-old woman out here can be a very different thing than a 70-year-old woman in Arkansas. Now, my mom's 70, right? But some of these women take care of themselves, and I've had them show up and chat me up and more or less try to take me home with them. But the ones who do that are 70, right? And then whatever that was. And then with the hypervigilance, it's like, am I going to get up and close the door? How do I stop looking at this? And don't want to see it in the first place. But what is that? That's the realm saying, the world is a vampire. Shout out to Billy Corrigan. The world is a vampire. And what that means is it's going to take everything that I'm dumb enough to give it. See? And now we're back to what? We're back to the concept of I'm back to the concept of, because there is no we, but I'm back to the concept of, to let that which does not matter truly slide. Right. And again, what I am desires to give. It desires to be helpful. Well, that's how the royal we got itself into this mess in the first place. And in fact, in some ways, this entire realm might exist as a lesson to not revert to one's own nature all of the time, to not engage at those levels, right? To not seek to be useful, in the story of the book of Job, which is misunderstood and I've been made fun of, and in fact, lost a potential friendship over in some ways. But, my own, again, spiritual warrior genius, to be able to recognize that that's what the Job chapter 1 is about, is the what I am is the desire in part to be helpful. And so when the moment the desire to be helpful meets antithesis, and then so the desire to be helpful says basically, what can I do for you today, antithesis? And antithesis says, I need something to devour and to vampirically suck the life out of. And then reverting to its own nature, the I am says, oh, well, here's Job. Maybe you can devour him. Maybe Job will be sufficient for you to vampirically value. And, in a detached fashion, if he's open to that, well, I mean, we don't need him in the first place, because what I am won't do that. Right. But it has, Benton, in the context of the performance, Benton has, again, now we're back to what's freely given. This realm it's not capable of properly valuing what's freely given. See? And so in order to extract value from me, there are women who will, potentially tolerate my own bullshit, lectures and spiritual discourses, and, oh, well, he wants to feel like he's providing something valuable. Well, so what? That's a feeling. Who cares? What does it matter that the being has a desire to be useful? That's really neither here nor there, if you think about it. It's a phenomenon that doesn't have to be acted upon or engaged or even acknowledged, right? There's no requirement to go along with that, simply based on desire. Uh, and so Benton, having a strong will and a lot of mental faculties and, all of these things, it's been fairly simple and easy. Is that my flashlight up there? Hang on. Let me grab this flashlight. It's been fairly simple and easy to avoid the desires of the flesh long enough to, unlock the achievement of true knowledge of self. But then again, the lesson from the book of Job, what about this desire to be seen as helpful or to actually be of use, in a utilitarian fashion? And that's, in a lot of ways, that is sort of the plight of the male in society. And remember, when I say society, we're only talking about an improper society. What? Well, but see, you're not a reliable narrator. See, this is me think thou doth protest too much, right? Slow boy. Like, do you think I'm going to listen to what you say, or am I going to go with my gut and my own perceptions? See, so what's the purpose of even typing that comment? Which I would say actually is more evidence in you're actually proving my point. And I'll read the comment just because, maybe somebody will hear this later. Anyway, actually, I'm not going to read the comment. And please don't ever come back to the channel, Slow Boy, if there's even a channel to come back to. And that's not a threat. I have no plans to delete the channel. And in fact, assuming YouTube doesn't delete the channel, if my channel ever doesn't appear, I might hide it, but I doubt it. I doubt I would ever hide it. But it is interesting, to accuse somebody of something and then here they are defending themselves. That's interesting. Um, but picking their spots otherwise. But just coincidentally happens to be, available to have heard, themselves they heard the call out, right? Somehow they got wind of the call out. And now and then how was the defense? The defense was delivered by what? Ridicule, mockery, and ridicule. Hey, silly one. And so, and Slow Boy does a great service to the channel by representing the majority of the audience, sadly, because that is the attitude of the majority of the audience is, to sort of play foil and, to be the tango partner, right? And to be my partner in a tango. But then as part of the dance steps, here comes the mockery and the ridicule. It's like, well, why would the being continue to engage in a tango and to then be mocked and ridiculed? See, and then also, what value is there for me to talk for literal years about ridicule and mockery used as a weapon and a cudgel, and then for year after year after year to go by and it's still mockery and ridicule? And see, this is what I mean about, what's freely given. This place simply lacks the ability to value that. See, and again, it's the withholding, right? It's the acceptance is okay. If you behave appropriately, Benton, we just won't mock and ridicule you quite so much, but we'll still mock and ridicule you. We'll just do less of it, and we'll do it in more of what seems to be like a jocular, good-natured fashion, right? But make no mistake, we will continue to do this to you. See, and then how can the colon and the large intestine properly heal if emotionally and energetically that's involved in a a grieving process and a clinging to something that must be released, which is to release myself from the tethers and constraints of involving myself with the opinions of whatever slow boy whiteboard is. Like whatever that, I don't know what that is. I have no idea what that is. Um, I have my own opinions about what that is. I would place a monetary bet on what that is if it's if it could be proven what that is, which I don't believe it can be proven what that is. But I have my suspicions, right? And then, to inoculate oneself against, certain uh gaslighting attacks, right? And so, and it's, I'm being gaslit in real time. It's to be gaslit in real time, right? By what? Somebody who claims, you know, perhaps again, if what I suspect is the case is true, by a person who claims to follow Christ, right? But also claims, uh, you know, that also recognizes the authority that's based upon the writings of Saul of Tarsus, which are demonstrably and provably not the teachings and gospel of Christ from the Bible. Provably not. See, it's not up for debate. It's not. It's not defensible. So just like the realm is not defensible, the idea that Saul of Tarsus was on the road to Damascus and had a direct experience of Christ and was given some sort of ordination, right? Well, this disproves itself because that's called the honor system. That's called we take his word for it. So if Paul, formerly Saul of Tarsus, claims ordination, well, that's accepted because somehow it ended up in a book called the Holy Bible. But that same person who supposedly lives their life based on that will never take anybody else's word for it. That even though the Bible says, you didn't choose me, I chose you and ordained you, right? And what's the proof of the ordination? Well, it's the spiritual guidance and protection and revelation in the Holy Ghost. See, there's no proof that the Holy Ghost and an ordination was visited upon Saul of Tarsus. That's a matter of faith. Benton's here, right here, right now, and able to talk to you and telling you, oh, yes, Christ chose me and ordained me, just like the Bible says, right? Meanwhile, have any of these individuals, the ortho bros and all of this, have any of them had those experiences and received that ordination? Of course not. How do I know that? Because I'm observing their behavior. And if they have received it, they haven't received it in the spirit in which it was given, that's for sure. Which is probably the same thing as not receiving it, right? And then, what is the need of the enemy, right? Again, slow boy whiteboard representing that which makes an enemy of what I am. Do you see this? And this is back to the idea that it seems like system agents are obliged to listen to my content and react appropriately. What's the motivation and benefit to that person to defend, and then also to defend through a raising of all bets, meaning they never concede a point and they always put it back on me. And I didn't even bother to read those comments out loud, but what I read of those comments as I was speaking was, okay, well, look, there's another bet and a raise. There's a maniac in my chat raising all bets. which is the only strategy that's ever exhibited by these folks. It's maniacs, and that's a term from poker, who raise all bets. See? And then what is it? What is the significance? Well, we know what that represents. It represents an individual who will not do better for themselves and who can't be shamed or mocked or ridiculed into feeling some type of way about their own refusal to what? Their own refusal to internally bootstrap sufficient to be at some point in the future capable of participating in a proper society, which means there can't be a proper society. So in fact, it's the individuals that create society. It's their own stubborn, rebellious refusal to do better within themselves, to bring up the level of their own performance, to be capable of participating in proper society. So that there can't be a proper society if there's not individuals who are capable of participating in proper society. So what we have is mostly individuals who are able to operate within authoritarian society where they're told what to do and they do as they're told, and then they go out, and I'm not a huge fan of the flying monkey vernacular, but they go out as flying monkeys and then they boss other people around. And the major way they seek to control and dictate in an authoritarian fashion is by blasting ridicule, guilt, and shame. See, to blast the mockery, the ridicule, the guilt, and the shame. See, and so we know that fruit, right? So it's the idea from the Bible. Again, I will use these people's own religion against them. That's the biblical concept of make the tree good or make the tree rotten. Well, they're following orders because they're not willing to make the tree good. The tree that's symbolically their own internal space would represent. They're not ever going to make that tree good, which would then allow what the Bible talks about with the bringing forth the good fruit. That's not going to happen. So they've already committed themselves to a path of a rotten tree and rotten fruit, and the mockery, the ridicule, and the blasting of guilt and shame. That's their fruit, right? Now, Benton suffers from that to the exact degree in which he's willing to entertain it, right? Which has been less and less and less over time. And what's instructive for Benton right now is what Benton is feeling in his guts. See, and so what's healing, what is happening right now with the healing is it's to know and to trust. See, and the mockers and the ridiculers and the guilters and the shamers, this is what they hate, because remember, these are the lovers of death, right? These are the lovers of death. And it's the part where Benton has access to restoration and healing, even as their attacks find no foothold. See, again, no weapon formed shall prosper. As that just happened, and the missile that was launched, the quickening spirit took evasive action, and the missile fired missed its target, and now it's exploded harmlessly into the sea. And a Top Gun, more so the video game, perhaps the old NES game, Top Gun, to no effect, no damage done. Now the victory, there is no victory in that, because what I am, again, is victory, and what I am will never know defeat. So whereas the lovers of death will never know victory, because their own performance excuse me, makes it impossible for them to access victory. They will only ever know defeat. And whatever demons inhabit them, whatever demons inhabit these people, that's what the demon's all about. The demon takes joy in that, and the demon, uh, uh, you know, it can't stand the healing and the guidance and the spiritual protection in the name of the Lord Christ Jesus that old Benton has been experiencing his entire life, because Benton is set apart to God and ordained. See, now that doesn't mean other individuals, but it doesn't matter, because see, now we're back to the philosophy of solipsism, right? In a way, it is a wholly individual experience anyway. So it is the philosophy of solipsism in a context. So it's really neither here nor there, because my salvation could never be your salvation and vice versa. I will never be called to answer for whatever these other folks are doing. And in fact, this realm gets a lot of mileage out of allowing people to assume that there's a clicking up and a grouping up, and that it's possible to then move forward as a group in and be transferred into heaven, right? Well, no, absolutely not. Meanwhile, heaven or hell is right here, right now. See, and what I am, yeah, it's able to pass through hell or underworld, right? It's able to pass through that, but it's not able to be contained within a hell or an underworld. Which is the notion of what? That's Christ's victory over death, being crucified and put to death for sedition, right? And to be crucified as a result, and then entombed, and then arising from the dead 3 days later, right? And traveling the underworld in the interim, right? The only way out is through. So moving through and beyond death without experiencing it, as far as I can tell, and then showing himself physically, and then what? After defeating death itself, after defeating this world of death and these game of lies, a total and complete defeat of this place. Again, Christ is victory. What I am is victory, and we'll never know defeat. There's no possibility of defeat in the Lord Christ Jesus. It can't happen, right? And then ascending, not to heaven, ascending into something that would represent heaven, which is to leave this delusory and illusory realm, and then to leave the illusion of time, space, location, place. And once that disappears, once the being is no longer seemingly individuated within time, space, location, place, now the only experience is one with the most super intelligent power and force of love and creation possible at the highest levels of vibrational frequency. And this world of death and game of lies will never acknowledge it. See, it won't acknowledge everything that I just spoke on, because it can't acknowledge it, because to acknowledge it would be to it would be to fail in its mission of loving death. See, it would fail in its commission of being a lover of death if it acknowledged that victory in Christ, or more correctly, the victory of Christ within me, because that's the in the world, not of the world part. See, now this is the pearls before swine part. And so this is the lesson for Benton, is to understand that, to preach all of this to demons, all that really does is torture the demons, right? So if it is a hell realm, I don't know that Benton's commission is to serve as a torturer of demons, right? I'm pretty sure what I am is it's not interested in serving as the tormentor of demons, right? Now, what I represent symbolically certainly symbolically is representative of the torture of demons, but that's of their doing. That's not of my doing, right? And now we see the subtleties. Now we see the subtleties of performance. See, and now again, Benton coming very close to the Lao Tzu version of "He who knows tells it not, and he who tells knows it not," or some rapper version, some pimp version of "The game is to be sold, not to be told." Right? Oh, I got one for somebody I think might be listening. Hang on, I got a song for somebody. Yeah, a collaboration. It's a celebration. I found a rap song that made me think of a particular person in the so-called truth community who might be listening right now. It's possible, especially if nobody else is live right now. So let's see. One moment, please. Oh, this Android 16 trash. Okay, let me find this song. This is God. This is a song. God Hand USA with Project Pat. Hey, are we getting donos? What do we get here? Thank you, sir. Much appreciated. We got another dono. Thank you, thank you. And that's what I mean by encouragement. If the majority of the audience was freely giving, um, that would add up to something quite awesome. But anyway, here we. I'll see if the screen will show. There we go. God Hand USA. I guess this is this inverted? Is this a mirrored? I don't know. I've never completely figured out the mirroring of the camera, but God Hand USA and Project Pat, that's the God law. Thank you, Raymond. Oh, that's right. I forgot. Yeah, I forgot I'm on my earbuds. Damn it. See, I got used to using the phone. I got too used to using the phone speaker or the phone mic. Live streamer fail. Yeah. My noise canceling earbuds are canceling it. So, yeah, they won't pick it up. That's a bummer. Oh, well, maybe I'll drop a link to it if anybody wants to listen to it on their own. Give me a second. Copy link. Mic check. Mic check. All right, cool. Anyway, if anybody's curious, there's the link to that song, God Hand USA and Project Pat. But I'm not even going to try to disconnect the earbuds at this point. Oh, wait a minute. It's time to go get the eggs. All right. Thanks for watching. Bye.